Tim Singer on a warm, cloudy day in Switzerland as we get ready for run number 2 of the men's singles competition. What a beautiful location, a beautiful naturally built track, rebuilt every year from start to finish from the town of St.Moritz down to the village of Celerina, Switzerland. Just moments ago, they concluded run number 1. Here are the top 3 in the competition. Wolfgang Kindl on his way to locking down second place in the World Cup overall standings. The former world champion is in third. Jonas Mueller claiming the World Cup title, his first overall season championship last year. This is his victory lap, currently in second. And then Dominik Fischnaller, week in and week out, one of the most consistent competitors in the sport, is searching for his 8th career World Cup victory. All 32 that started in run number 1 will see action again in the second and final heat. Women's competition tomorrow to be concluded by the team relay in this event that is doubling as the European Championships. Right now it is my honor to once again reintroduce my broadcast partner, a 2014 Olympian and World Cup race winner, Kate Hansen. And Kate, it's a long track. It's a big field with 32 athletes. We have some waiting to do before Fischnaller and Kindl and Ludwig duke it out. That we do know, though, has already been decided.
Yeah, the top, we kind of have the vibe for what it's going to be. But, I mean, the story, I feel, has been similar for a lot of these athletes. We've mentioned it a few times. You know, the track is long. And you kind of have to be perfect, unfortunately. I mean, it's not like there's enough speed to really make up time on the bottom. So every little bit, every little inch off is going to make a difference. And we saw that a lot in the first run where people were having, just small mistakes and the deficit was huge at the bottom. So hopefully, these athletes made some adjustments and they're ready for the second run.
Josef Hušla of Slovakia leads things off here. They go from slowest time to fastest time, as is the case in so many of these 2-run Winter Olympic sports. And the clock running as he skids his way into Horseshoe is added on from the first heat final time of 106.465.
Yeah, that was just a nice little skid at the top, but it kind of was a different skid for me. I mean, we've seen there's essentially 2 types of skids where either they'll break into a skid and take off, which means the runners are sharp, or it's kind of just a light grazing skid, which means the runners are a little more round. And I felt like that skid was a little more of a grazing skid. But with his time, of course, coming up in first place, 107.236. Let's see what that would have put him for his first run.
Hey, Reinhard Eger's got his fan club here, taking in the action on what could be his final World Cup race. He's one of 5 Austrians in today's competition and will be coming up a little later on in 17th place after the first heat. But Hušla takes the early lead.
Good look at that start. And look at that mountain just sitting in the background so beautifully. This place really is iconic on the tour, and the ice. I mean, personally, I've never had the chance to slide here, but I've heard that the ice here is just impeccable. I mean, the ice crew is so talented at what they do, and ice quality is such a big part of this sport. So athletes just really enjoy being able to slide on top ray ice.
15 workers full-time on the ice throughout the winter here. Okay, we have 2 young Romanians in a row, Crăciun followed by Tăria, neither of them qualifying for the Olympics this year. However, Adrian tweets in, watching this morning from Romania, to remind us that Valentin Cretu is off to his 4th Olympics. Raluca Strămăturaru will be competing at her 4th Olympics. That's after a 7th place finish in Pyeongchang. And the doubles team of Jitlin and Serban are off to their first games. So there will be good representation for the Romanians. And if you want to be represented by Twitter or email or any other messaging you want to give us, you can find us on Twitter at Luge Announcer, email luge.announcer@gmail.com. Heck, you can even find me on Instagram, Tim Singer FIL. And we welcome your comments, your questions, and especially your Olympic predictions.
Olympic predictions. I feel like it's really going to be a crazy year, but this run, putting together a clean run, has a lot of good time in the bank to work with. The Romanians have really stepped up their game this quad. I feel like, over a second.
Hey, you date back 30 years. I told you I am a man of trivia. 30 years ago this year, the 1992 Olympic Games, in doubles, Romania finished 4th.
No kidding.
Yeah, I don't have this info in front of me. I want to say Apostol and Sepoy were in 4th place at those Olympics, which is a hugely respectable result for a nation that doesn't get a lot of attention.
Especially no track
That's right.
to add on top of that. Would have liked to see his feet pointed just a little more, but overall, he was relaxed in the sled. For some of these athletes we've mentioned, when it's their first World Cup, just clean runs is what they want, because you can build on that. You can't build on not clean runs, I guess, but a good look at his spikes with the duct tape right there. Every athlete has a very specific way that they like to tape their spikes. It's all personal style, personal preference, what feels good in the fingers, in their knuckle. It's different with every.
It's not a piece of athletic equipment you can just walk into Dick's Sporting Goods and buy, though, is it?
No, there's actually a lot to it. It's a pretty fascinating piece of equipment, because you can't have your spikes past a certain length. It's only a certain amount of millimeters, and they check them for every race. And then some spikes are made of metal, some spikes are made of like plastic, like a hard plastic or like a ceramic. And each country will have their own type of spikes.
Theodore Turia with a good advantage over his younger teammate Edouard Chrétien here, out of horseshoe and down the lower right-hand turns as he makes his way to the flatter section of this course. Down at the bottom. Good speed, 88.2 miles per hour. Should be in the lead, and he is by a 1/10 of a second.
It's a good transition in the bottom of the track out of Gunter Sachs. Nice straight line. When I was talking to Tucker West earlier, he was saying the pressure there can be interesting for the men's height. A lot of times if they go too middle or too late, they'll come out and just they'll hit that right wall, losing a lot of speed for their run. Great look. Would have liked to see a little more extension on those paddles, but sometimes when it's your first time at a track, you're not necessarily really focused. Oof. That was a great hit. The height was a little too much. You saw it point the direction of his sled, which then created for him to have too much height on the end, crossing him too soon. Just the physics of it was a little off, but I loved the send, as some people would say. He really went for that height, hitting woods up there.
Uncharacteristic first run for the 3 Olympic Russians. Berzins back in 22nd place. The best Russian finish was a 12th place. And I mention this each week, it bears repeating. When you watch the Olympics in a couple of weeks, there will be no Russian team, Kate. There will be athletes from Russia competing at the games, but the nation is barred from being represented as a country at the Olympic Games. Ongoing sanctions to several infractions over the past few Olympics.
Yeah, there's been a little bit of contention over that over the past few years, but they're doing their best to kind of regulate the situation, and it's nice to see some consistency from the IOC. Staying firm on their rules. But I couldn't imagine being an athlete who wasn't affiliated in some of those problems and not be able to compete for your flag. I think that would be difficult.
It's a great point, and there is consistency, but unfortunately sometimes sports federations and the International Olympic Committee don't necessarily get along, and they do have to reach compromises. Good run here by Berzins. Let's check that out, 105.744. That would have put him in a tie for 15th place after the first run, as a result of or as opposed to the 29th he finds himself in.
Nice look at his curve. I like that his head is staying neutral. Actually, I would have preferred it to be more down the curve, with a nice roll. But, we've seen a lot of athletes with their head leaning more up the curve, and usually that's not a line that athletes want to go for. So overall, pretty good position from Gorbacevic.
Andre Monzi, you got a good look there at his last-minute visualization. All athletes in the sport of luge spend a great amount of time picturing the run from top to bottom, and in the case of Monzi and many others, they also tend to move their body in the direction they anticipate it will be going from top to bottom.
Yeah, I love that you brought that point up, actually, because so much of sliding is visualization and understanding these curves, because we have to remember, these athletes only get 6, 7, 8 runs if they're lucky on a track each week. So, and you can, if it's your first time at a track, you can expect to crash for maybe one of them. So a lot of it comes from prep before even getting on the ice.
Quiet ice here, the natural course in St. Moritz. This is horseshoe curve. You shoot down. This is a very steep left and then right to set up for the bottom part of the track.
We heard a little bit of noise. His feet might have dropped a little bit. We mentioned it in the first one. One beautiful thing about St. Moritz is, some more skidding right there. How quiet everything is at this track. It's so beautiful, and the sleds can also be so quiet.
It's peaceful here. I love the walk, Kate, from top to bottom, or even from bottom back up to the top. You can do a little shortcut by the Cresta run, and it's just such a gorgeous place. And as I say all the time, if you do come to St. Moritz, make sure you bring your wallet and someone else's, preferably, because it's it's not the place to show up with and having your luggage lost, because you're going to be in rough shape.
How much would you say a cup of coffee? What's our ratio here?
I haven't been there in a couple of years. I want to say $7 would be probably a bargain at some of these cafes on Main Street.
Bargain.
That's a great look at the concentration of this World Cup debut athlete from Germany, Mathis Ertl. 27th place after run number 1. That's a position you rarely see a German in anywhere, at least one that hasn't crashed. But it'll be fun to follow this career. Another one of the Germans out of Altenburg, the region that has produced Chris Eisler and, more notably, Julia Tobitz.
And the great Tatjana Hufner. Oof. We heard that. That entrance was looking off for him, hit a little early. But I loved what you mentioned. That was a great look of him at the start, and that embodies so much of what the start feels like. It's not this intense moment where you're like, I want to pull really hard. You're actually really calm, and you're breathing through your motions, and you're visualizing the run. So it's a really peaceful moment, but then you got to go 0 to 100 and then back to 0 after you kind of go into this sprint energy with your paddles.
Getting brighter out here. The snow has stopped. 35 degrees Fahrenheit, 3 degrees Celsius. It's supposed to be sunny tomorrow for the women in the doubles. Ertl with a rather forgettable World Cup debut, but he will get plenty of runs on the German tracks the rest of this winter and leading into next year. And there will be some shuffling on all of these World Cup rosters. I wouldn't be surprised to see him around more often in the years to come.
Yeah, sometimes we'll get a peek of a German athlete. We'll see their name on the board, and then they might get stuck more training at home in local races, and then we see them in a couple years making their appearance back up. Germans are great because they have to be great to make it to be successful in the World Cup level. So we may see him again. Maybe some time before we see him again.
Marian Škup up next for Slovakia. And one thing about the Germans, there'll be a lot of retirements after the Olympics. That's just what happens, as you know, Kate. But Germany is hosting the World Championships next year, which only happens about 3 out of every 4 years. But but you figure at least the Thuringians may stick around to compete at the Worlds on their home track.
Yeah, I could imagine that. I mean, I would be curious your predictions on who would and would not be back for next year, but I don't want to put any bad omen. I don't know. It's a sensitive.
I'm always happy to predict.
Okay, who do you
The
think?
worst you can be is wrong. But let's just, the moment at hand here is heading through the Nash and Dixon with a lot of steering. Not a lot of hitting, but a lot of steering for Skupek. Let's check out this split. Yeah, he's 2,500s and still skidding, Kate.
Big issues in telephone. The height just wasn't there for him in horseshoe. Hit too early telephone, then put him late, and just causing a lot of skidding from there. You're kind of just playing catch up from that point. You're on the defensive. You're defensively sliding from then on.
Now down to the finish. This will not be a leading run. It may not be a top 5 run. It's 7th place, 107.659. Gorbatsevic moves up a couple of spots here. He really had nowhere to go. And we will check out this replay. We'll set the stage for the exciting next athlete. And I promise you, Kate, I will get to those predictions.
You're giving us a good lead up. You're keeping everyone on the edge of their seat. This is good. Oh, yeah, skidding right there. Kind of broke out on the end. That happens when you go late. So that, yeah, again, just super late. And there's nothing you can do. Mentioned it before. You kind of become a victim to physics. And then you're just surviving at that point. But he did a good job. I mean, keeping the sled shiny side down. Not flipping over. But just when you go that late, there's nothing you can do with that.
Okay, we turn our attention back to the top, and one of the great stories of the day is the reappearance of this man, Miua Sokovic from Poland. Had an awful accident in the World Cup opening during training on the Olympic test track in China. It was not his fault, but he was the victim, and he broke a kneecap, went to the hospital. He laughs that he's one of the few to not only test the track, but test the medical facilities at the Olympic site. But he just diligently trained, coming back from the injury, starting at the junior start, returning to the World Cup last year for training only. And now he is back on ice and a member of the Polish Olympic team.
What a scary injury to go through. I'm brushing up on exactly what happened, but a barrier was in the track. Is that correct?
That's right. Just inexplicably left on the track. And he did all he could to avoid even worse damage. Just an awful situation.
Totally. And that's honestly, kind of slider's nightmare. I mean, especially when you do these track walks, they're always adjusting for bobsled, adjusting for skeleton. And that, yeah, wow, that really is incredible that he's back here. Despite the time, we don't even care about the time. He has shown up, and it's incredible.
As I said, Kate, in run number 1, when he finished the Nations Cup run yesterday, everyone was down here to greet him at the finish with cheers and applause. It was a great story to have him back.
A lot of respect for him. There's a good look at his start right there. I'm just so happy that he's also, I mean, to come back and to slide again on the Yangqing track, it's just so much confidence. I mean, he's fearless. Sometimes these accidents can keep people off the track for the rest of their career, and he's putting on a good face on camera. We don't know the emotional toll it took for him to get back on the ice, but a beautiful and incredible story, and he's going to inspire a lot of people with that.
Alexander Gorbatsevic has now moved up 5 positions. Let's see what Reed Watts can do for Canada. Reed competing here as a North American in what is the European Championships, a double, 2 races in 1. And every week, Reed showed up at the Nations Cup, which I mentioned he calls the most stressful day in sports, and he qualified for the World Cup race. And the Nations Cup, it does hold more importance, Kate, we should note, than just qualifying each week for the World Cup, because several athletes that didn't even make it, or maybe made it once into a World Cup field this year, did make the Olympic team, because the smaller nations still get their allocated spot, and you still had to do well at that Friday race to be considered.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's always different for Olympic year, and that's kind of why, too, we'll see some new names when Olympic year comes around. I mean, the field opens up a little bit. I mean, you mentioned how many sleds end up getting in overall for both disciplines?
35.
35, right. So normally, from a women's field going from 24 a couple years ago, now we're at 28. So we're able to see a little bit more mixture of the flags and the colors and culture once we get to the games.
18 in doubles, by the way, if you're keeping count. Watts into the lead by 0.05 of a second for Canada. It's Canada over Russia and Ukraine. That man, Gorbatsevich, had a nice little run, as we expected he would do, but now it's Reed Watts leading with Italy up next. All right, Kate, you ready for my predictions on the Germans?
Okay, yeah. Let's hear
it. Which discipline do you want to start with?
Okay, let's go. Okay, what do you think the doubles will do?
Doubles. Agert, Benniken definitely stay at least through next year. That's their home track. They want to win another world championship. Toby's biggest mystery to me. I'm not sure. It's not as big a deal for them to do it in Thuringia, where they've won world championships already in Königssee. They've had a great career. If they win gold at the Olympics, who knows where they may head. So that's a double situation. And then all the young doubles teams will be back, of course, although things have been frustrating for Robin and David for sure the last couple of years. This is Lucas Gufla. We'll get to the women in a second.
We'll space it out.
Yes, that's good. Yes. And I'm still waiting for people's Olympic predictions here. Put yourself out there. Let's see who's going to win the pool. This sport in particular, Kate, Ludwig's got to be as much a favorite as any of the 3 or 4 disciplines with the relay offer up, because not only has he had this spectacular year, you may remember at the opening weekend he blew everyone away in China. I mean, he destroyed the field in each heat.
I'm looking up his overall. Okay, yeah. Interesting, yeah. I mean, he's a little bit behind today, 600th back. We haven't really seen anyone make up time at the bottom of the track. If they're already flirting with the green and red line around this point, we might see them come up in green, but it's just the small mistakes. Things are slowing down for this athlete. He handled that well. That could have been a lot worse. He had a lot of lateral pressure coming into that right wall, but he stayed relaxed, and he managed to steer himself out of it.
2:12.301, a 4th place time, dropping 3 spots right now as Reed Watts holds on and moves up 1 position. As I mentioned, the sun is peeking out, but it's 2 in the afternoon. It's going to disappear behind the mountains very soon. Even if it comes out, it's going to be a beautiful day tomorrow here in Switzerland.
Not moving on the sled, not making too much noise. I think that's one part of the sport that I tend to forget is one of the hardest parts about getting the sled down easily. It's just letting the sled run and do its thing and not fighting the sled. That makes the best athletes, the ones that can adjust and just be relaxed on the way down.
David Gleicher, as I mentioned in run number 1, has what appears to be a hate-hate relationship so far with this St. Moritz track, finishing 32nd last year at a time where he was really regularly in the top 5. He's in 22nd after the first run this time around at the European Championship. It's especially important to keep that head tucked back in the slow, flatter section near the top, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that part really is such a big deal. I mean, it's not like they're really accelerating either. It's just quiet. I mean, they're just really kind of hanging there. So oftentimes, I felt when I was going down straightaways like that, I mean, you're not even breathing sometimes. You're just trying to calm your breath because you don't want the sled to jump any little bit. So once you get down the track, there's a little more speed. You can kind of be a little more loose and adjusting in your sled, but at the top, it's really got to be quiet in that sled.
Nice lines here for Gleicher as he has a speed of 88.7 miles per hour through Portago at the finish line, 105.690, well out ahead of the Canadian. That is not a lot faster than his first run time. It would have put him up maybe one other spot. No, actually, no, I stand corrected. That's, I I had my numbers reversed. That would have put him in the top 14, the top 13 or so.
A nice look. We can kind of see the full bottoms of his feet. I mean, it would be nice to see them a little more pointed, but when you are in the track already, those booties already point your feet for you. But I'd be curious if any of the athletes maybe studied if they really put an extreme point on their toe at the top of the track versus being more relaxed, if they saw a difference in their splits. But normally you want to see a lot of intention with trying to point their toes.
Anton Dukash up now for Ukraine. That's a great point, Kate. And, we cover a lot of skeleton as well, which you're excited about doing at the Olympic Games. And there, it's an entirely different proposition. Obviously, you're face first, you're on your stomach. But what you do with your legs is entirely up to you. And some athletes have them spread out, some have them crossed, some have them tucked together. And there are so many ways your legs and feet and direction can be.
Right, absolutely. I mean, it depends on the country, too. I mean, as I've talked to skeleton athletes, the Germans tend to be very uniform, very tight in their posture and their position. And then, the Americans that have learned in the more recent years how to drive will have more relaxed, wider legs. So it kind of just depends, on the team brand. And it's similar with luge. I mean, we see it in starts. Each country has a brand of starts, which gets really interesting because they're all learning from the same coach, right? So we kind of see these subtle touches and notes of culture within these countries.
Martineau curve with the mountains in the background. Anton Dukash not succeeding in his effort to hold his spot, but he will only fall back one position, and of course that's pending what happens with the next several sleds. It's David Gleicher, the Olympic champion, seeming pretty chill down there in the leader area. Not chilled as in cold because it's a fairly warm day, but just very relaxed.
Yeah, a lot of these athletes are like that. It just takes, I love the energy that's on the circuit. Everybody is, they travel for so many months together and they spend so much time together. And it's not like there's a lot of turnover of athletes. It's, the athletes you joined with as a junior are the athletes you slide with as a senior. And you really get to know these humans around you and you really, your people skills, everyone's just like nice. They're good people because you have to spend so much time together. And perfect example of that, Alexander Ferlazzo, great guy, great personality. So fun to watch.
Alex off to another Olympics representing Australia. It's summertime in Australia, but this is a nation with a lot of great winter Olympic tradition. They've had bobsledders over the years. They've had some good skeleton athletes, including this season. They had a victory in skeleton. And
here in St. Moritz.
That's right, and skiing, ski jumping, aerial skiing. They've always had great athletes, so fun to watch. And Ferlazzo just the latest among Australian Olympians.
Totally, and for him to represent Australia, it's not easy, right? It's not like Australia was like, hey, you should come do this for us and slide, and we'll pay for all these things. I mean, for these smaller nations, these athletes really got to scratch for any amount of resources. So for him to be this successful, to qualify for these World Cups, it's a big deal for Australia. So I hope the Australian Olympic Committee gives him some props, some respect for making it out here.
105.902. The one downside, of course, is Alex has been doing this with basically no teammates or very few over the course of his career. I've talked about this a lot, Kate. I would love to see different nations gather together to form relay competitions because an athlete such as Alex Ferlazzo deserves the opportunity to take part in that race as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember you mentioned this, but then it might get complicated of like who gets lined up with who and if that's fair. But even just for these relays for the World Cups, it'd be so fun for these athletes to get paired together.
And it wouldn't be that complicated because Coach Maciej Karowski, who's the head of those small nations, he could make the call, have a qualifying standard week in and week out. Anyway, we love talking issues, but let's talk race. Josef Ninis, he is headed to his 5th Olympic Games. He was very, very quick down at the bottom part of the track here in run number 1. That's sort of his trademark, and these long tracks are not bad for the Slovakian, the 40-year-old Slovakian, as long as he can keep the lines clean.
40-year-old Slovakian, 5th Olympian. We've mentioned, he's really made a full career out of luge. A lot of luge athletes will, kind of do their time and then move on into something else, but he's been able to create longevity in the sport, which is really cool. I have a lot of respect for him. It's not like these athletes are making a ton of money. I mean, people do it because they just love it. So for him to show up and be able to compete like this, he's really milked. I think that's a good, really squeeze the juice out of the lemon for this.
Well, we are probably looking at the last World Cup run of Josef Ninis. It's been a great career. As usual, kind of perfect Ninis lines. Sometimes the sled is fast, sometimes it's not. Ooh, they were a little harsh off of that curve, Gunther Sachs. And
had a lot of height, but managed it well. That could have been a lot worse.
88.6 miles per hour, dropping 3 spots, still trying to control that sled up the outrun. So now Gleicher is giving us what I would deem to be a little bit of a show there in the leader zone, because he can't be overly pumped about moving up from 22nd to 18th or so unless there's something we don't know about going on.
A little bit of a flop with his settle. There's different strategies for the settle and the sled as well. The one thing you don't want is when you settle to have the sled jump or move. So we'll see different settles from different athletes, but I don't want to take away from the story of Chris Mazda this season. Truly so much leading up for him in this moment right now.
Absolutely, and it began with a broken foot in November during training. He came all the way back from that, still did double duty, and like his counterpart, Olympic silver medalist Diana Eitberger, she did not stick around to see the season through, as she did not make the Olympic team. Mazda had to wait until the final seconds to see if he made the Olympic team, because the USA wasn't sure if it would have a third sled. It got that sled, and now Mazda is making the push back to his 4th Olympic Games.
Yeah, things got intense there for the American, especially coming off of a silver in Korea. I mean, it shows how much the sport can change. You can be incredible one quad, but then try and keep up the next quad, and it really just takes being on top of your game at all times to remain dominant. Fortunately, he's dropping back into the red, 9 thousandths. Not sure if he'll be able to make it up. If he drives clean lines, there could be a chance.
To the finish, he was in the green, then the red, then the green, then the red, and now the green again. This has been the funnest run we've had a chance to call today, and he hangs on to 11.690. So that shows that you can make corrections, you can do things to move yourself back into the green. As you know, Kate, we cover some races where once it turns red, it's going to be like commuting on Long Island. It's going to stay red. You're going nowhere.
One thing I want to point out is I'm looking at his time. So he's about 400ths of a difference between both those runs. Consistency is key right here. So what this tells me is that his driving is good, but maybe his sled, he's still trying to figure out something that's going to run for her sled, because Chris knows how to drive. He's strong, he's powerful, and he's, to be back this far it's not where he wants to be. So, he's got the consistency, but hopefully he can find something with his setup going into Beijing.
Well, you heard the cheering, Kate. What a great tribute for this man, Reini Eger. I got to believe, based on what we're seeing here, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Reinhard, but this is his final run of a great long career. His teammates were applauding at the top. He has family down below, what appears to be family. I'm not sure how they got in, but this will be emotional. Win, lose, draw, green, red at the bottom here. It's one to savor.
I'm feeling I'm feeling this for him right now. I mean, wow, what can you even say? Like a whole career in 1 minute. And it's like, it's heavy, but it's beautiful and it's bittersweet. And, to accumulate your entire career just from, I don't know. I guess I don't really have words either, because I remember this feeling, and you just don't really ever imagine it's going to end. And then it does. And
to the bottom we go. Mazder has the lead. Ager crosses with the lead. So a great finish to what could be his career. And Kate, it was a great second career for Reinhard Ager, who nearly quit the sport about 5 years ago with bad back problems, but came back to win his first ever World Cup race, added a second win. Let's enjoy the moment.
wow.
Well, there will be others today for whom this will be their final competitive run, but none as well known or decorated or certainly heralded as we're seeing here. An emotional moment for Reini Ager. Competition continues. 16th place after run number 1, the 2015 World Cup champion, 2018 World Cup overall champion, Semen Pavlichenko.
He had some issues on his first run. He was not looking at this point, and then he kind of bumped a little early coming into wall curve right here. Handled it better. He came up in the red for his first run, and I didn't see anything big with his run, so I'm hoping that he can kind of figure out those speed secrets for the second run. He's got 300ths to play with. If he drives clean, he should hold that.
Nash and Dixon, the corners leading into Horseshoe, then Telephone, Shamrock. Great names, great history on this track. The Russians have actually been coming to St. Moritz as tourists for years, and the Russians are coming down the track now with a little bit of authority.
He's staying in the game, hasn't lost time. He may be able to gain some more time coming to the bottom. That was a great transition. I would have picked that transition for myself into the finish. Wow, put up another 400th for himself coming into first.
105.783, nearly matched his first run time, so he's consistent, he's in the lead. All told, it might be construed as a disappointing weekend for Pavlichenko, and maybe the same could be said for his season, Kate. His best result was fourth, but he'll finish this World Cup shut off of the podium all season long, other than team relay, which is a bit surprising in this Olympic year.
Yeah, he's pulled results in the past, and so you can never count him out on race day. I mean, it's not like he's contending every weekend for medals, but he's one of those athletes where you know he's got speed in his back pocket. It's just going to be if, the weather lines up, the ice lines up, and his sled. So he's going to be someone to watch for in Yangqing.
The celebration continuing for Reini Ager down below, but Arturs Durzniaks has some work to do up top. 15th place after run number 1. He has a fairly good lead by Luge standards over Pavlichenko entering the run, about 0.05 of a second. Let's see how long he stays in the green here.
Oof, that was a big mistake at the top. It looked very subtle and like nothing, but that will cost him. But he's just going to continue. I feel, if I know what I'm talking about, he's going to continue to bleed time, but maybe I'm going to be wrong, but what happened was he just bumped that wall. He even had to tap his feet. It's just not, that's a part where you can save a lot of time, and it's just not what you're looking for the top.
Opening up the lead, he had the fastest start time, and if you follow all of the sliding sports, you know it's the start time's important, but the velocity coming off of that start equally as important. So I'm not quite sure what you picked up, Kate, but he was able to overcome that, but still skidding a bit.
Yeah, he'll be able to hold on to it. I mean, if they show it at the top, it just happened on that flats, but he could have been so much faster if that would have been clean. But still came up 0.12 ahead. A nice hello from Pavlichenko.
300's faster than his first run time. He is shaking his head, so clearly he's telling himself, despite the one that the coach flashed.
Here it is. Just came straight into it and just bumped. It wasn't much. Had to drop heels just a little bit. Normally not a big deal. At that speed, it's a big deal. And he could have just been so much faster without it.
Interesting. You see almost every bobsled do that. They hit that little wall, they tap it.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Is that Norbert Locke over there? Congratulating Reine as well.
Very
Family
cool.
on hand. And again, the emotions continue. This is the situation in Olympic years. And now we have Johnny Gustafson, speaking of Olympics, on his way to his first Olympics in 14th place after run number 1. If he holds his spot, he will equal his best result of the season, which was also a 14th in Sochi. Big paddles from a big man who has big start times. Third fastest so far.
A little slower than his first run, but managing to stay fast. You can see, it looks like he's playing with it just a little bit at the top. Not that big of a deal, but with only 7 thousandths, he's really got to be perfect for this one.
200ths, it's roughly the advantage he held over Darzniek's entering the run. Now he has fallen into the red, fallen behind the Latvian. A nice line here in Horseshoe. We saw his teammate go from red to green down below. Mazder, will Gustafson do it?
I'm watching closely his run, really picking apart the transitions. Nothing too big. I mean, he's staying within the lead. He might be able to open it up. That was a great transition. A little bit of lateral movement to his left, but pulling up in the green, he should maintain.
He finds the speed down below. He equals his best result. 14th place, he could move up even more. Kate, that's the good news, but in the same breath, we have to say, and I know it's not easy for you, especially as a teammate, but I'm not sure there was an American man in the top 10 this year in the standings, and that is shocking in any World Cup race, right?
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned it, the Americans, they're kind of struggling to find their stride, and it's unfortunate because there's so much talent. I mean, there's so much talent in a lot of these athletes, and it just comes down to timing, sled setup, weather. I mean, there's just it's like so painful to say, but there's so many variables to winter sports that can just be out of your control. So, you know, there's still time for Beijing, and maybe the Americans just got some secret sauce they're waiting to pull out, but they have the talent in the sliders themselves. So if they can figure out their setups, that it should turn out to be a little better for China.
Got a good look there a moment ago. Christoph Schweiger, who's not only the executive director of the International Federation, but has been serving as the COVID hygiene officer. You can't state enough how important that role has been the last 2 seasons. Isla on course now for Germany, not headed to the Olympics. And to your point, Kate, some athletes go home because that's what the nation instructs them to do if they don't make the Olympic Games. Some see it through what they began, the World Cup season. And then you've got athletes, I mean, Jason Turdeman's a great example. He headed back home to help the Olympic team get ready.
Yeah, it really is a team effort, and that was such a generous move for Turdeman to do that, especially giving the younger American team his sled. And you know, it's really it takes a village for athletes to be successful. And Isla right here, he's got some time, he's gaining time. It looks like that transition could have been a little messier, but he handled it well. It had some lateral movement off of Gunter Sachs.
Eisler will hold his spot in the top 13. He'll conclude his season in the top 15 in the World Cup standings. But Johnny Gustafson, as we said, will equal his best result as well.
He's feeling good. He's feeling that's a great feeling to get your best result. And you know, had Eisler had one more curve, I'm not sure he would have held on to the lead, but luckily for him, it wasn't a few seconds longer. Oof, nice bump right there. That didn't help his cause. And then it was a little I mean, it's nitpicky, right? But on this track, to be fast, you have to be nitpicky. But yeah, I have a lot of respect for him for finishing his season despite not making the Olympic team. I think that, that's a pretty humbling thing to do.
Roman Repilov, as I mentioned during run number 1, he heads to the Olympic Games not off of a super stellar season, but as the two-time defending world champion. I didn't love that line down the start ramp.
He just grazed that left wall. Didn't even get his hand in. Was just trying to save him some time. And I mean, Roman's really interesting to me. He was so quick coming out the gates and was just so fired up. But seems like the sport, has kind of worn on him a little bit this season. And there's not as much fire, at least from what I've witnessed. But and we all know that he has speed in his back pocket, two-time world champion. So I don't know, I'm keeping my eye out for him for Beijing.
No reason not to. As Repilov makes his way down the bottom part of this track, his younger brother captured Olympic silver here at the Youth Olympic Games 2 years ago. We certainly hope we return to St. Moritz post-COVID so we can enjoy this beauty. The athletes are having a good time and a good competition here as Repilov, with good speed, 89.3 miles per hour to the finish. How about that run? 105.387. That would have been top 9 in the first heat. Not a lot better place-wise, but a lot better time-wise.
I thought I heard some skidding more towards the bottom of the track, but the time does not reflect that, so maybe I don't need to speak at all, but we'll see what his replay shows. Yeah, that start right there. That was well played. I don't think he touched it, but he stayed patient, didn't fully settle, and was able to keep his speed up.
That's a great look at the focus of the Luge athlete. 89 miles per hour. As he gets congratulated by his mentor and fellow world champion teammate, Pavlichenko. Well, something fishy going on here in St. Moritz today. Had to throw a pen in.
You were waiting for that one.
Because Dominic Fischneller is the first run leader. He'll come up last, but now we have his cousin Kevin Fischneller, who is Olympic bound and a former World Cup overall champion in the sprint discipline.
See his feet moving a little bit, trying to get that early entrance into wall. You don't want to oversteer, but that kind of comes with the territory of learning how to steer these sleds. These athletes get into the sport so young, and it just takes so many years to master how to do this. Whereas bobsled skeleton, they'll recruit them a lot older. So we'll see some movement in the legs, but Fischneller, he's a great driver, just like his cousin, where he knows the line of oversteering versus letting the sled go.
To the bottom, it's very tight between the Russian and the Italian. 0.02 of a second separating them. Nice lines here by the Südtirolian. Kevin Fischneller now falls into the red. This is where Repilov was so fast, and it will be second place right now, just 0.03 of a second out of the lead. I want to play off your comment there, Kate, if you don't mind. It's well documented that you need many more years, many more runs to master the sport of luge versus, say, skeleton. Is that true across the board, or in skeleton, can you join the sport and be okay in a couple of years, or can you join the sport and be world class in a couple of years?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I know for bobsled, they can just get those push athletes and they can be Olympians in a year. Skeleton is difficult because you're a one-man team. You have to learn how to drive that sled, and you have to work your way up from the younger tours. I mean, the smaller tours. So I think before, having not learned much about skeleton, I probably would have just been like, oh yeah, it's not that hard. But as I've studied more about it, I think it still takes a huge learning curve to learn how to have the finesse of driving.
On course now, Max Langenhahn. He's Olympic bound for Germany. He's had so many great results, so we forget how young he is, Kate. Still just 22 years old, and as a result of that, he's still really getting familiar with some of the non-German tracks. and he had a very disappointing 32nd place finish in Innsbruck. He's back here in 10th place. But on the familiar tracks, he's pretty much a sure thing in the top 10 now.
Yeah, I mean, that's one blessing from being from Germany is they offer 4 incredible tracks. I mean, that you really have to learn how to drive and be calm. And so when they put these kids on the sleds at such an early age, sometimes 4, 5, 6 years old, these tracks become second nature. So when the Germans do well on non-German tracks, that's when we really see how talented they are.
We hope there will be 4 tracks again next year, or at least we hope Königssee will be back in the mix, because everyone loves going to Bavaria as Langenhahn crosses the finish line into the lead, 2:10.295 or 956 for the 2 runs. Yeah, so we'd love to be back in Königssee for sure. But Kate, there are a lot of non-Germans that don't necessarily love the fact that 4 tracks is one thing, but hosting a World Cup race each year on all 4 tracks seems to take up a good chunk of the calendar.
Yeah, and you can count on it, yeah, especially being an international athlete where that's not your home track. You can count on those tracks being a thing. But then when you do get your moment, when the World Cup comes to your home track, that's kind of your moment to relish in it. So that's why I have so much respect for the countries that don't have a track and they still manage to show up every year and qualify for these cups.
Max Langenhahn into the lead, and his Olympic teammate Felix Wach now ready to go. Felix won his first world championship way back in 2008. He followed that up with Olympic gold in 2010 and 2014. He was on the podium here last year in 3rd place, and he's back in 9th place right now after the first run. And so, yeah, let's talk about predictions. Will Felix be back is the question. I believe Ludwig will retire. The youngsters will all be back. Felix, here's my off-the-wall prediction. Felix will take next season off, but then may consider returning to the sport.
That's a good prediction. I kind of feel like, same for Toby's. I'm like, I don't know what else. For them, the success they've had in the sport, it would take a strong force to pull them elsewhere, I feel.
Well, you can make a little bit of bank being a coach in Germany, of course.
Yeah, that's true.
1700s up on his younger teammate, the 2-time Olympic champion, actually 3-time Olympic champion when you count that relay gold in 2014. He comes across into the lead, a great run, 105.194. That would be a 4th place run in the first heat that could move him up 3 or 4 spots here in the second run. He finished 8th here way back in 2012. He's one of, just 5, 6 athletes in today's race that competed here in 2012 at the World Championships.
Yeah, he might pick some people off with that run. Really, such a bigger improvement. I don't really remember seeing problems with his first run. So, knowing the German machine behind him, I wouldn't be surprised if they swapped some steels or did some different steel work back at the top, and that kind of gave him this run that he just had.
Leon Felderer. The good news for him is he's headed towards the Olympic Games. He's had a steady season, very consistently in the middle teens. 18th, 13th, 18th. I'm working chronologically here. 13th, 15th. Then a nice 8th place finish is best. 13th and 16th. But here he is, Kate, in 8th place. He's going to be hard-pressed to keep up with the 2 Germans that just put down spectacular runs. But if he's in the top 3 here, he's in the top 10 in the race.
Only 13 thousandths to play with. Already having to adjust the sled just slightly. Wow. Lost almost the 300th of a second just in those straightaway. And I think that just goes to show how specific you have to be on those flats. I don't know if that kind of banana line affected it, but I think the next split will be able to tell us how well the top of the track went.
Through the Nash-Dixon section into the high line on Horseshoe. The high line's a good line, if I understand it. and tapping walls, but very slightly.
Sled sounds good as he goes down, but yeah, just very slight mistakes. They're just going to build up. Comes out clean with that transition, but it's just not going to be enough for him. And I think I kind of felt that from the start. There just wasn't much time for him to have mistakes, and those little mistakes, especially at the top, he's gonna pay for him at the bottom.
Felix could move up a couple of more positions. He's really become the Stepan Fedorov of this season. Felix has probably spent more time than anyone improving his spots in the second run.
Got knocked down a little bit going into telephone. Just small things. I mean, it's so hard to pick apart these runs because over a minute, it's so hard to be exactly perfect. You can never be perfect, but it's with the caliber of this field and the men's field, these guys are going to have to be perfect to get onto the medal stand.
David Gleicher currently in 12th place. Nico Glacier on course right now. He has been the second strongest Austrian this season behind Wolfie Kindl. Two names that perhaps, Kate, were the two you would have least expected to be on the Olympic team. They were probably fourth and fifth on the depth chart entering this season. Just proves how important it is, as you mentioned, to peak at the right time.
Yeah, and sometimes those things are out of your control. So we're kind of seeing both ends of it, right? We saw his teammate Ryan Eger deal with, his timing being off, and we're looking at Nico with his timing being on. And sometimes it just takes the stars to align for your dream to finally come true. And it's, the season can create dreams and break dreams.
Top five in 5 of the past 6 races for Nico Glacier. He has the lead. He's giving Locke certainly a challenge here with nice lines down at the bottom. The Austrian at 89.7 miles an hour. Can he hang on to the green? He does. So, and for Austria's Nico Glacier, who will be heading to the Olympic Games red hot. Trivia for you, Kate. The very first World Cup race I ever covered was in Innsbruck 30 years ago, and the race was won by Nico's father,
dad.
Gerhard.
Wow.
And there were 54, but at least 54 athletes in that field, because Gerhard won that race, I'm just visualizing this, with bib number 54.
Oh, wow.
That was a long night.
That was a long night. Yeah, it's cool to see kind of the family relations run into the field. But I've just been so impressed with his sliding this year. And I just remember what I felt like being younger on the circuit. And I was a ball full of nerves. So to see someone just come out, ice in their veins, consistently top 10, sometimes within the medals, I have a lot of respect for it. And he earned that spot to Beijing.
From the department of not going down without a fight, you have Jonas Mueller, who really had a legitimate chance to make the Olympic team, but he had a couple of tough results and had some very tough teammates to contend with. So he is racing for the final time this season. Kate, you in 2010 missed out on an Olympic berth. Could you have imagined showing back up in the World Cup and still trying to plug away? How tough would that have been?
Yeah, I mean, that was tough. I did take time off. I needed time off. So I totally understand when people need a break from the sport, but it's beauty and pain to come back and really grind at your dream. It's such a beautiful process, but it really can hurt a lot of athletes, and they don't think they're good enough because they continually just keep trying. But Jonas Mueller, he's so young. I mean, he's got so much in him still, and I saw the look on his face when, his spot kind of was given away, or he gave away his spot, and I just really felt for him right there. Big mistake, knocking him back into the red.
Yeah.
He's going to come up way behind.
He will fall behind, won both. He's in third place right now. If it's any consolation from the word I'm getting, the sport director Marcus Prock, head coach Rennie Friedel are very, very high on Jonas Mueller's future. So you just got to stick with it.
And one thing that makes his future so promising is his attitude. Even when, racing is just whatever for him, he just has a good attitude, kind of similar to Mazda for me. And those are the types of personalities that do well, ones that can just shake off the problems and move on, and also really relish in winning. And so I think there's a lot in store for Jonas.
All right, we're down to our top 5 now after run number 1. It's a pleasant surprise to see this man, Jens Berzins, in the top 5. He finished 5th once this season. That was in a sprint competition in Innsbruck. Last year, in his first ever race here, he was 10th, but it really wasn't his first ever race because the year before here in St. Moritz, he was first at the Youth Olympic Games, gold medal.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of an edge on the rest of the field with that extra training time from the Youth Olympics. And year after year, that experience just builds. He's had 400th in the bank. He's losing time, hemorrhaging slowly. He's going to have to drive perfect if he's going to keep this lead.
It's Nico Glacier of Austria gunning for another top 5 down at the bottom, and it's looking like advantage Gleicher. You picked it up, Kate. There were some problems up top here that may not be corrected in time.
Yeah, just getting worse as he goes. I'm not seeing anything huge that would explain this, but oof, except for right there. That's probably the biggest skid we've seen, almost causing him to crash. He keeps it together. But what a bummer for the young athlete. He was locked in to get into that top 5, and
he was. Now he's out of the top 10 for the moment at least. And how about Nico Glacier? 6 top 5s now officially in his last 7 races. He certainly made the decision a lot easier on the coaching staff, a lot less controversial. He earned that spot on the Olympic team.
And what a blessing for the coaches, because when it gets confusing like that, and you're ruining people's dreams and creating dreams. Yeah, the top of the track just a little messy. This was his big problem though. Just went too late, too much height, straight into that right wall, tried to fix it, and just not much he could do. But I'm keeping my eye out for Nico. He may sneak in. I mean, he could with his momentum that he's had this year. That would be very exciting for him.
Well, we've got a fun little battle going here for 3rd place in the World Cup standings. Johannes Ludwig has already clinched the Joska Crystal. Wolfgang Hindel has all but clinched 2nd place. But Locke, who's currently in 2nd place, Fischneller, the first run leader, and this man, Christers Apperjods, are all tight in the points to end up in 3rd place in this year's overall points.
2,400ths to work with. One thing that he has working for him is his size. He is just tall and he's large for his age, and that helps so much, especially on a track like this where it's going to come down to speed and just those small details.
Krister's sister Kendia returns to action following an injury tomorrow in women's singles competition, as Tobitz and Egla will battle for the World Cup overall. That's what you call a promo in television.
Stay tuned. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you for that feed. But right here, he's not losing or really gaining time. This is a good run for Apperjods, and just consistency that's been, wow. He's really just shown up this year, and it's been so cool to watch someone of his age just come up and win, just casually, pull some gold medals from the World Cups this year. And again, he's proven why he's been great this year.
Depending on where he ends up, if he holds that spot, I believe he's still going to be a couple of points behind Felix Locke in the standings at the end of the day. Fischneller still to come, could blow past both of them, of course. So this is a fun little race within the race, which is within another race, the European Championships. And then you've got the under-23 European Championships.
So much riding on this last World Cup. Yeah, I'm looking at the overall right now. Apriodes, he's about 27 points back, 26 points back. Maybe I did my math wrong from Felix. So this could get interesting. I wonder, though, how much they care, too, right? Like, unless it's the overall title, or, do they really have skin in the game for their overall, or are they just looking for the Olympics?
Don't know. Probably differs from nation to nation, athlete to athlete. There might be some incentives. As Wolfie Kindle hits the ice, as I mentioned, he will end up second in the World Cup, but don't think he's hanging his head because that marks a huge improvement over his last couple of injury-riddled seasons.
Dealing with a back injury, he's gaining time. He was back a little bit, but this is what he does. He gains time towards the bottom of the track. He drives so well. He just understands pressures. He knows how to get through these curves. So we'll see. Oof, this is going to be close. This is going to be a good one.
Can he hit the 90-mile-per-hour mark is the question. If anyone can do it down below, Wolfie can, and he's in the green. That's not a surprise. It will be another race, another podium for the Austrian world champion from the 2019 Worlds. The speed is 90.2 miles per hour, and he has a time of 2:10.246. Now, it was very tight between Kindle and Ludwig. Well, actually more between Ludwig and Fischneller after the first run, so he's going to need some help to move ahead of third place, but that was a great run.
That was textbook Wolfgang Kindle. He, comes off the top, not the fastest starter, but he really went for it. If they show a replay, he's not looking for, part of those first two straightaways. He's really stretched out, really just trying to just scrape any thousandth of a second because he knows he makes up time at the bottom. Yeah, right here, he's just like pointing those toes. We're not seeing the bottom of his feet as much as we've seen other athletes. He's just looking straight at the sky. And then he just drove well. These bottom transitions were really clean. And yeah, I'm not surprised he came up in front. This is what he does, and this is why he's successful.
Look out, Wolfie, in Beijing. That is going to be another story. And that, mentioning Beijing, we mentioned Johannes Ludwig. His greatest season ever for the 35-year-old with a long career that includes Olympic bronze. He will head, regardless of what happens here, he heads to the Olympic Games as the gold medal favorite. He's a World Cup champion as he takes a peek up. He won the World Cup Olympic test event in Beijing, probably by a wider margin than anyone's won any race this year. Let's see how he can conclude this memorable campaign.
There's been a lot of stories this season, and he's one of my huge issues in Nash Dixon already. There's no comeback.
What caused that? Did that happen out of nowhere, or did you see that coming?
I honestly missed it. The Nash Dixon, it's just such a fast transition that we haven't seen that today, so I don't know. It's not on the forefront of my mind, but our replay will be able to show it.
Again, there was nothing at stake for Johannes Ludwig other than perhaps a little bit of pride and keeping a good run going, but it comes to an end here as he will likely drop out of the top 10, and he's in 10th place right now. He did finish out of the top 10 one other time this season with a 13th in Sigulda. Everything else has basically been perfection or near perfection. And boy, Kate, you don't want to be thinking about that run as your last run before an Olympics where you're the favorite to win gold.
Okay, here we go. Here's what it was. It comes up on the curve. Oh, he just kind of came straight into that right wall. Bounced him off, just kind of pinballed down there. It seems like maybe he came in too late into Dixon, and it just picked him up, sent him over. His face off of the track, we haven't seen that face before this season. It was almost like this disbelief, like, did I make a mistake? I've made no mistakes this whole season, and that was my first. And now putting into contention Wolfie and then Apriodes taking a medal as well.
But advantage Fischnaller, who with that Ludwig mishap has a 1/10 of a second advantage over Wolfgang Kindl. Dominik Fischnaller with 7 career victories on the World Cup, and he's spread them out, Kate. He's won, it seems, at least one a year for at least the past half dozen seasons.
Yeah, this is his moment. I mean, that was a huge issue, way too late into wall curve, or maybe that was potentially snake. That was a big issue. Already jumping back into the red, excuse me. I was just going to explain, this is Dominik's moment. It's been 4 years of just thinking of that 4th place finish in Korea, and unfortunately, this is not the momentum he wants going into Beijing.
Well, this historic track in St.Moritz has offered up some incredible drama and, frankly, some surprises here in the last 2 sleds. The top 2 fall behind. They fall way behind. Wolfgang Kindl of Austria is going to capture the top spot. For Kindl, it's his 3rd victory of the season. It extends his points in 2nd place. There was nothing he could do to catch Ludwig, but come on, a victory heading to the Olympics. How sweet is that?
Yeah, that is incredible. He drove really well. Unfortunately, it's coming at the cost of mistakes of others. You could see Dominik right there. That is really just a letdown for him. He was just, oh gosh, I'm really feeling for him. I from the Korean Games, and this is, gosh, I don't really have words for it, because this is the momentum that he was looking for, and that was such a disappointing Korea Games for him. Yeah, it just happened right here. Completely missed the curve, sent him super late. Yep, and then just right into that left wall, into those snake curves. Dang. Unfortunate
for Fischnaller, but as I've said so many times over the years, he's always in the hunt. And we certainly expect he will be in 2 weeks, when everyone reconvenes at the Olympic Games in Yangjing, Beijing. Congratulations to Wolfgang Kindl. Kate, as we check out these final standings, a couple of fun little things to note. Ludwig has 11 career victories. Kindl now has 10 career victories. And they end up 1-2 in the World Cup standings. Great day for Christoph Apriodes, who is enjoying a good season, as you said. Let's keep a close eye on Apriodes at the Olympic Games. While we see these trophies being handed out and get ready for the World Cup points, I have to throw it at you, Kate. You don't have to make any good, hard, strong predictions, but who's your group to watch?
Ooh, gosh. I'm feeling emotionally connected to these athletes, and so I'm always supporting the young guns, kind of, because I love when they come in and shake it up. This is the first medal podium, I think, without a German in it. So to me, I just like seeing it being shuffled around, but going into the games, I really just have a hunch for Repolov. I just feel like there's this fire in him, and he just hasn't really competed how he's wanted to. But then Kindl, an incredible driver. There's a lot of really high-level stories going into Beijing, and I'm just excited. And Nico Glacier, he's got a lot of momentum. So I don't know. I honestly can't even give you a prediction, but I know these guys have all worked incredibly hard for this moment, and this season has really shaken things up. So
to be statistically accurate, this is the 2nd time this year that the Germans were shut off of the podium. But as you see, they have dominated the season. These are the standings, not including the sprint, but they matter for one big trophy. Then we will see the overall, all of the races. And this is stop number 9, but 14 races all told with the sprint competitions. Actually, they took one sprint away, as it was unofficial in Oberhof. But we'll get those standings in just a second. We also have the European Championships at stake here. The under-23, the awards ceremony should probably take the better part of the afternoon here in Switzerland. Yeah, there's Gerhard Gleicher right there between the two trophies.
Yeah. So proud of his sons. I mean, could you imagine 2 kids going to the Olympics? It's super cool.
Yeah, that's old hat for the Sheik's parents, right?
Yeah. They're like, we're used to it. Step into our arena.
Now they resort things. It's just a little different with the points for the World Cup overall. I believe Felix has held on to his spot as number 3 in the standings. But it was a wire-to-wire victory for Johannes Ludwig. So the Kindle story is important. Aperiod season is significant. But wire-to-wire. Ludwig won big in Beijing. He held the top spot the entire season.
Yeah, it's such a cool season for Johannes Ludwig. I just keep thinking, he was the alternate, and then he finally made the games. He pulled his bronze medal, and then now he is leading the circuit.
These are the official final overall standings. And Ludwig takes it. Kindle cuts into the lead. There was nothing he could do. How about Christers Aperiod ending up in 3rd place, tied with Felix Locke? Fischneller had a chance for those top 3 at the end. He ends up in 5th place. Look at all of the top finishers. And there were some 50 or so competitors all told, all of the races combined this year. So congratulations to everyone. Kate, especially the fact there were some crashes, there were some mishaps, but there was nothing disastrous. And that's always a great way to come out of a season.
Yeah, this was a big race. Athletes are really looking for the momentum going to Beijing. Everyone has been thinking about the Olympics, not only just the past 4 years, but just every race this season. So, the world champs get switched out for the Olympics. And I think all of this will kind of poof and disappear once they step into opening ceremonies. And then it's game on for a completely new experience and new race. So hopefully these athletes have figured out what they want to ride on and their setups for Beijing, and I think it's just going to be a good show to watch.
Well, Kate Hansen, thank you so much for your insights all season long, and I wish you the best of luck at the Olympic Games in China.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I'm so excited to stay in the know with all these athletes that I care about so much.
That's Kate Hansen. As she gets ready for the Olympics, all of these athletes do as well. Some of them we'll see tomorrow in the relay competition. So that's your tease for the final day of action here in St. Moritz. We begin with women's singles, then the team relay from historic St. Moritz, Switzerland. Well, that'll put a wrap on day 1 of the final weekend on the Eberspecher Luge World Cup. For Kate Hansen and all of us here, I'm Tim Singer. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow from Switzerland.